Welcome back to the Working Fans Podcast. Today, the man called Dave has a huge interview with somebody. You've seen him in wrestling. You've even seen him on our YouTube channel. Today, we are welcoming the good doctor, Landon Hale. Landon, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. How are you guys doing?
We're doing good, man. First off, thank you for your time. Appreciate you, man. And I guess let's start off at the beginning. What was your pro wrestling fandom like? What were you into?
So for me, I was mostly into like WWE. I did start off watching WCW. So I started off when I want to say about 4 or 5 years old. I was a huge fan of WCW. Growing up, I was a big fan of Rey Mysterio. I loved watching the cruiserweights, so like Psychosis, Juventud Guerrera, Chris Jericho. And that was one of the things that I bonded over was with my dad, which unfortunately he passed away when I was young. But that was like one of the bigger connections was with wrestling. So it was mostly like the WCW era and then WWE. And then, when I started training under Robert Gibson, I looked into like the old school territory days. So that was sort of like a expanding of my wrestling horizon, which is pretty cool.
You trained with Robert Gibson of the Rock and Roll Express. How did you make that contact? Was it something you just saw online, or how did you break into the business, I guess?
So I'm from an area of Kentucky where it's not well known to, go to wrestling shows. So like in the Northeast, like, in Connecticut, everyone loves wrestling, or New Jersey, New York, Massachusetts. In the Southeast, like Georgia, Florida, South Carolina, North Carolina, they love wrestling. In my part of Kentucky, it's not so popular. So I was like, you know what? I have one life to live. Let's see where it takes me. And so one of my buddies, he's a professional wrestler in my area. And we were talking about, how to get into the business. He brought me to one of my other buddies' place, and we had a ring set up, and I took my first ever back bump in a legit backyard. And it was the best moment just because it just felt like it hurt the next day, obviously, but it felt like home. So I decided, okay, I just want to see where this takes me. He introduced me to a guy out of St. Paul, Virginia. His name's Mike Sampson, and he wrestled in the WWF, but it was more so like the jobber position. So he was pretty much wrestling like the Hearts. He was wrestling like old school wrestlers. And so when I moved down to Georgia for chiropractic school, I was talking to him about who I need to get in contact with. And then he told me about Robert Gibson, because there's a bunch of other schools like AR Fox, Nightmare Factory, so on and so forth. But where I was in school and also doing this and already had my training under my belt a little bit, he was like, it's best to go under Robert Gibson. So I've been training under him for about a little over 2 years, and then school shut down. And then I moved up to Massachusetts, and now I'm at New England Pro Wrestling Academy, sharpening my sword there.
I think way to turn a negative into a positive too. The school shuts down with Robert. You're in the Northeast. Now you're at another wrestling school, and you get to kind of maybe blend a little bit of everything what you're learning too.
Yeah, it's different because Robert, he's very old school. So he's a perfectionist. So like when we get into the ring, it's like, oh, you're off by like this much. You need to do it like this. And it's just like the smallest increment. You're like, oh, like this makes sense. And so he makes things more fluid. He makes sure that you, for him, it's more so psychology, where you understand the reason that you're wrestling, the reason you're doing the moves. And then up here, not saying that they're not based on psychology either, but they're very fast paced, because it's a different style when it comes to the South versus the North. Like the South is very old school. It felt like you're back in the 70s or 80s, and some places, versus up here, I feel like it's very fast paced. Everyone still wants to be involved, but they want to see all like the cool tricks that they see on AEW and WWE and stuff like that. So it's a good mix of both for sure.
Now, Joe, when he introduced you, called you the good doctor, and you mentioned a little bit there, you were going through chiropractic school. And so my question was going to be what came first, but it sounds like it was around the same time?
It was around the same time. So I graduated from Morehead State University with my bachelor's in exercise science in December of 2017. I transitioned from physical therapy to chiropractic, and then I decided to go down that route. I want to say I started school in October of 2018, and then I got my training started off in July of 2018. Had maybe 2 or 3 matches, which it's very rare because they want you to like wrestle or train for 6 to 9 months, maybe up to a year, to get everything taken care of. And I started my first wrestling match after 2 weeks of training. So yeah, or I would say 2 weeks, but 2 days of training within the 2 weeks. So I had 3 matches there. And then as I moved down, I wanted to get acclimated with chiropractic school, so I wasn't trying to get on shows that heavily. But then a few months after being under Robert, someone no-showed, and the first thing about wrestling is make sure you bring your gear. So I brought my gear, and luckily everything went smoothly. And ever since then, never looked back.
Taking advantage of opportunities, I guess, is the moral of that story. Any kind of line of work, if opportunity arises, you go for it.
Yes, absolutely. And then with wrestling, it's definitely an opportunity I've definitely taken for granted. And from there, it's been uphill ever since. So I'm really thankful for that.
One of the things me and Joe was talking about, like he had some questions for me to ask you. And he said, I forgot to ask this. How do you want to word this? And I said, let's just do it right now. I'll ask you because you're going to get it. We're talking about chiropractic. We're talking about pro wrestling. And I'm curious, how do people in the chiropractor business feel if they ever find out that you're a pro wrestler and vice versa? Because I feel like I know as a pro wrestler, it's probably pretty cool, but as a chiropractor, that can go either way.
It's weird. I will say there's some chiropractors that are, like that's not good because you have to have your hands for wrestling. And I will say, I ended up having surgery on my wrist, and this was again, like I wrestled in Griswold. Like I didn't get or I guess before that I was in a cast from November. I guess I was in a cast in September of 2022. I had surgery on my scaphoid, which is my one of my wrist bones here in the thumb part. So like it's in this little snuff box right here. I had to have surgery on that, and then I was out until February. I think it was like February. Started getting back into training like around February, March. Had my first match back in April. So they were like, like there's some consequences if injured because you're going to have to depend on doing your chiropractic work. So some people are kind of like seeing the negative side of it, but I do have a great boss where he understands that this is a passion of mine. And so he's really like, even after coming back from injury, he's just like, just don't get hurt. And I'm like, yes, I'm gonna be even more cautious. But yeah, I do have some people that think on that negative side, but overall very supportive.
Yeah, I mean, that's something I've been talking about with a few people too. I think you can probably relate to this. It's like success, take advantage of opportunities, work hard, put yourself in the right place. But boy, you need a good support team. And the fact that you have a boss who is very understanding, hey, this is something you want to do and you're chasing a dream. I feel like that's something that's something better about right now in the era that we're living in. Like maybe in the older days, it was a lot far more like, oh, man, you ain't here. we don't care, but it's still nice to have though.
Right. Absolutely.
I guess one of the other questions I'm curious now, you're young in your career, but when you started your career here too, in the middle of it, you had COVID. What was that like?
So pretty much during COVID, I became Robert Gibson's champion, and it was for a show called All Pro Championship Wrestling. And then I started running an angle with someone, and then unfortunately COVID happened. And so I was in chiropractic school, and that kind of, I wouldn't say put a halt on it, but we had to do like online classes and stuff. And then that also put a halt on doing pro wrestling. And so during that time, it was like a few months of it being away. And it was just kind of like, we're all in our houses. We're doing, we didn't know what was going on. And now we have more insight on it. But we finally opened back up after a few months later. And we were doing, like I was training, and there were some shows that they were doing their social distancing and stuff like that. So it was a tough time during that part, but I will say the only good thing that came out of COVID was the fact that I met now my wife. And so it was during that time that we got to meet. So it was really cool.
Oh, look at that. Again, some more negativity, positivity can come out of negativity. And that's great, man.
You just got to see the bright side of things every now and then, because if you stick with, I've learned that if you stick with the negative mindset, you're going to have negative results. So if you have positive mindsets, no matter if it's speaking it out to the universe, no matter if it's actually happening, you just got to see it through a different lens. Because if you see it through that negative lens all the time, that's literally all you're going to get is that negative input, negative output. So I just want to make sure that and that's like the biggest blessing that came out of it. And so now we're almost married for 2 years. So it's been a ride for sure.
Yeah. I just saw something, I think it was an interview with John Cena. He was on Logan Paul, and they were talking about him being in the Barbie movie. And he had said he had tried out, he wanted to be in it. And he said, actually turned him down. And he's over there working on the Fast and Furious movie. And he said, I actually wanted to be in this movie. And he ran into the actress Margot Robbie, and she's like, oh, I wish we could have you on set. He's like, I wanted to. And she goes, oh. She's like, well, we're going to get you in. And so she comes back and says, okay, you're going to be in it, but you're going to have to play a mermaid man for like a minute. And his attitude was, you mean I get to play a mermaid man? awesome. I'm in. And I thought, what a mindset. Like, right? Like this guy, no hesitation, no that's probably why he's one of the greats, I guess. No ego, just let's do it and let's kill this thing.
Exactly. And I think, it's good to have, I think, somewhat of an ego, not so much of like egotistical or you think you're better than everybody, your crap don't stink, that sort of attitude. But it's like, that you're good. There's a difference between confidence and cocky. And so, that John Cena is that guy where he's done so much with wrestling and he's pursuing this acting career. And in this point now, I wouldn't say he's low on the totem pole, but, compared to like, let's say, like Leonardo DiCaprio, that's, in increments of like that. Now, this is me. This is John Cena with wrestling. This is John Cena. This is Leo DiCaprio with acting. So he's still like any chance that he gets, he's going to take. So that's awesome to hear though. That type of, but yeah, absolutely. You definitely have to, set egos aside with stuff like that.
But also self-confidence and knowing that, hey, I can handle this. You had mentioned winning a championship for Robert Gibson. At this point, you're early in your career. What would you say are some of your greatest accomplishments so far?
So for me, definitely winning. So I was a 2-time APCW heavyweight champion, and that was Robert Gibson's promotion, which they're not running anymore, but I still consider that one of my highest points, considering that's my trainer and, that's his school and stuff like that. You're proud of where you came from. Wrestling in the Scenic City Invitational and becoming runner-up. So it's the biggest tournament in the Southeast, one of the biggest tournaments in the country. Wrestled against 16 of the best competitors and, being a dark horse or being the underdog in that tournament, becoming runner-up in that tournament. Not a lot of people expected that. So that was a big accomplishment. ETU, Expect the Unexpected, or ETU for short. They had their Run the Gauntlet challenge and I outlasted, I think it was 3 wrestlers. And so I ended up, and wrestlers, like, how that process works where it's winner stays up pretty much. I outlasted 3 wrestlers and I was in the longest for like 25, 26 minutes. I'm getting ready to go to Germany to wrestle. And then I have a few other big announcements that are coming up that I can't really say just yet. But once you hear them, you'll be like, oh, snap, this is pretty cool.
That's awesome, man. Congrats on just getting to go to Germany too, like getting to travel. I think people will talk about sometimes it's one of the tougher parts of pro wrestling, but it's also kind of a cool part at different times too, getting to like see the world. So best advice you've received so far in pro wrestling? Be
patient. There's a lot of people in wrestling, they want to hit so many goals in their life. And, some it comes to them fast, other it takes a lot of time. I'm one of those guys that I like to see success hit me fast, but I realize that it's a process and it's always that cliche term. It's not a race, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. And, like during those moments, you're going to have like the in-betweens where, it's not just going to a city to wrestle and win a championship. It's not just, going and winning a tournament or going to this place. It's about the in-between, the connections that you make. Everything else will come with time. And so I was doubting myself coming back from my injury early last year. And I was like, okay, like, am I going to be set back? Is a lot of people going to remember me? Is anything going to happen? And then, having this, debuting at Northeast Wrestling and doing stuff with them, wrestling a lot in the Southeast, going to wrestle in Germany. I'm getting ready to announce that I'm going to wrestle somewhere else internationally. That'll be posted. A huge big time matchup that's going to be announced hopefully soon. So there's just a lot of things that's coming my way. So patience is the biggest key. And so every day I just count my blessings and I just have to realize that, God works in mysterious ways, whether you believe in him, whether it's, you have something, like whatever your beliefs are, is that your time will come and it comes at the perfect time. That's going to be beneficial for you.
Something I wasn't even really thinking about, but I just wanted to comment on and ask you talking about that, like again, talking about your injury and coming back. I'm kind of curious, would you say that being a chiropractor has, obviously, having a solid foundation, another line of work and other things, has it really helped you in your pro wrestling career?
It has. And, when it comes to being a chiropractor, again, there's a lot of different situations with, I guess people in their careers and like what they're doing. But for me as a chiropractor, and my wife's a chiropractor as well, is that I'm taking care of my body. And, I understand that some of the stuff that I do is very high risk, high reward sort of deal. Like I do a lot of high flying, but I do take care of my body at the end of each day. I take care of my body throughout the week, making sure that my spine gets adjusted. So I'm feeling better and functioning better. So I know I'm going to have, these bruises here and there, or I may not feel as, up and chippy the next morning after a big match, but I do take care of my body in the best way possible. So it does have its benefits towards my end.
That's good, man. That's good to hear. Now we're gonna do a couple quick questions. You can rapid fire however you want to do it. Not really wrestling related, but more of like a get to know Landon Hale kind of thing. Favorite music?
All time, it depends on the day. It's either if I'm working out, it's heavy metal or heavy rap. Throughout the day, it's mostly country.
Favorite comfort food?
Oh, you got me there. Probably pizza.
Pizza. That's a great one.
Pizza or ice cream. Yeah, I'm an ice cream addict.
It's all at once. Can't go wrong. All right, and then last one, kind of a combination. Favorite TV show or movie?
Favorite TV show. I like Family Guy, but I'm also a fan of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. I'm old school like that. Movies, probably the London Has Fallen series, or the Fallen series with shoot, I can't think of his name right now. Oh crud, Gerard Butler. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, I was getting ready to look this up. I'm like, wait a minute, I know this, but I never saw it. So I'm like, all right, cool.
Great. If you love action, that's one I would recommend.
You talked about, you're going to Germany and stuff, big things on the horizon. What are the goals of this year? I'm guessing you have some goals.
Yes. So do well in Germany, do well in the other country that I'm going to be announced later on, do well against the opponent that I'm going up against, and that's not announced yet. Try to make it to the Scenic City Invitational again this year and win it all. And then just have awesome quality match that's going to get to where I want in life. So I really can't ask for more. So I'm just ready for anything and everything that's been thrown at me.
Is there anything you want to promote that's coming up? Because obviously there's some stuff you can't promote. So
I wish I'm holding this in so much, and I'm like, I really want to tell, but again, it's not my place right now. But right now, I actually just got announced for Action Wrestling in Tyrone, Georgia, and I'm wrestling Teriyaki, which he's been wrestling at Pro Wrestling Noah. He was trained under Air Fox, so he's been doing a lot of good things. And then I'm wrestling at TWE in Chattanooga, Tennessee on February 10th. And funny enough, and I know this is going to be aired later, but I'm actually wrestling I'm actually wrestling tonight at Chaotic Wrestling for the New England title.
All right. So a lot of stuff coming up. And social media? Instagram, Landon Hale, Twitter, Hale Yeah 3, Facebook, Landon Hale DC. So check this man out wherever you go.